Hi everybody, I'm going to show you how we're going to answer this vectors question in very few simple steps. Okay, so the magnitude of PQ is 20 units. Given that OP is 50 and OQ is 17y, find the positive value of y. Okay, so now I'm going to draw a diagram that will help us answer this question. Okay, so let's have our origin there, we'll call it O. And then we'll call this, so one will be P, then the other part will be Q. Okay, so we have been taught to say the magnitude of PQ is 20 units. So implying that the movement from P to Q is 20 units. Now, these are vectors, okay? So what we're going to do there is this. We are going to move from P going to Q. Now, the assumption there is, we use this analogy. We imply there is no way there. So we have to come back to O and then all the way to what? To Q for us to get to Q. So what we've been given in the question is we've been given from O to P, meaning that it is that direction. And then we've been told O to Q, meaning that we're moving from O to Q. And then we've been given the vectors for both. So if we are to move, from P going to Q, how can we move? We should move from P to O. So P to O, and then from O to Q. That's how we can come up with that 20. Now, if you check what we've been given in the question, PO is not given. PO is not given. So what are we given? We are given OP, which is against what? The direction. So since PO and OP are in the opposite directions, we can just say negative or P. So we'll just say PO is against a direction, so we'll add the negative to the vector of P. And then plus our OQ as it is. Okay, so this is what will help us find the vector PQ. So it is better to write it by starting with a positive one, which is OQ, and then you subtract the negative one, which is OP. Okay, so at this point we can just go on and substitute. What is our OQ? Our OQ is 17y. And then what is our OP? Our OP is 5 and 0. Okay, that looks perfect. Okay, so this is our PQ. We can create some space. Okay, so 17 minus 5 is going to give you what? That would be a 12. Y minus 0, that would just be y. So we found our vector PQ. Now, there's a concept that has been introduced in the question which we call the magnitude. So the magnitude is just given as the square root of the x value and the y value. So that would be 12 squared plus y squared. This should be able to give us a unit, which is 20, as given in the question. Okay? So at this point, $12 squared is 144 plus y squared. So we can do away with a square root both sides by squaring. So we'll square this side, and then we'll also square that side. So 20 squared will give us a 400. And then the square root and the square will cancel out. we remain with 144 plus y squared. And then we'll now have 400 subtracting 144 is equal to y squared. So calculators are not allowed. So 400 subtract 144. 0 minus 4 we can't, so we'll get a 1 from there, we'll remain with a 3. And then here we'll leave a 9, and then the 1 will go there. 10 minus 4, that's a 6. 9 minus 4, that's a 5. 3 minus 1, that's a 2. 256. Okay. So this side we're going to have 256 after subtracting 256. Okay. So to find the value of y, our value of y squared, is going to be, so we have to now square both sides. So the square root. Now what value can you multiply to give you 256? What number can you multiply by itself to give you 256? I can give you some ideas on how we find such answers. We understand that 13 multiplied by 13 should be 196. So how about if you try 14? 14 multiplied by 14 will give you what? 4 times 4? That is a 16. Carry 1. 4 times 1, that will be 5. 1 times 4, that is 4. 1 times 1, that's a 1. So this will give you, actually this is what is giving us 196. If you try 15, what do you get? If you try 16, let's try 16. 16 by 16, 6 times 6 is 36. 6 times 1, that is 6 plus 3, that is 9. 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 1 is a 1, that would be a 6. 9 plus 6 is a 5, it's 15. So that would be 5, carry 1, so 256. So the answer is 16. So y is equal to 16. Okay, so that's how you find the positive value of y. We understand that when you introduce your square root, you've got plus or minus, but then our interest is only to get the positive value of y. Okay, so that's it to this question. I hope you've learned 1 or 2 things.